Okay, welcome to video number 5 in the series where we are showing how to make a Modern Sukajan jacket from scratch. Last video we had finished up the sleeves. In this video we're going to be doing the bodies. And in this case, for the black, we need to quilt the back first, and then we're going to apply this embroidered patch. We're going to sew that on. And then for the white side, there's no quilting, but we're going to heat press the artwork to the back. Okay, and we're going to start with the quilting of this one. Okay, similar process as we did on the sleeves. We're going to lay out our batting, and we're going to place our pattern piece on top and use some map weights to hold this down, and then cut it by just tracing the outline. Okay, we got this all flat and smooth. We use our rolling knife. We're going to leave about a 1/16 of an inch margin. Just want it just slightly larger. Alright, so I'm just going to trace this whole thing out, and I'll see you when you get to the end. Okay, we've cut the whole thing, and while we have it sitting here, and it's all sort of aligned, I'm going to use this opportunity to clip it together. Okay. And I like to clip it in different places around the whole thing, and then we'll come back and then clip like every 2 inches. All right, I'm going to do that, and then I'll see you after. Okay, we've got our clips roughly every 2 inches. We can take off our map weights, and then we'll head over to the sewing machine. Okay, we're at the sewing machine. Alright, you notice that I have the quilting foot back on here, and we have it still set at 2 inches from when we were doing our sleeves. Alright, I'm looking at this from the bottom. Alright, so this is the bottom, this is where the waist is, and this little notch here is the center. And if you remember, we had said we want these little harlequin diamonds to be about 60 degrees, so that's 30 degrees from each side down the middle. So if I were to line this up, I would want 30 degrees from this center line. Okay, so you can see the fold line here, this crease. If I put the notch, the center point there at the top of that notch, then this should end up being, this should be at 30 right there. Alright, so that's the line I want to be on for this first pass. Okay, so line that up center to the needle there, and then we're gonna do one straight pass this way for our first pass. Okay, so we've lined it up to where we think we've got 30 degrees. We're just going to be straight on this line here, starting from the center of the back at the waist. Do a little back tack. And then we're just going to carefully try and make this as straight as possible on this first pass. Alright, so keep going until you're all the way up right around here, okay? Alright, we're coming to the end here. Take our clip off, and then do a back tack. Okay. So now this is the starting line that we're going to key off of, and we'll start by moving this over to here where the bar is, and then just keep continuing to do it all the way across, and then we'll flip it over. Okay, now we're nearing the end of this pass. We'll get this back tack and then cut. All right, so we've done from our starting point over to here. Now we're going to flip it and then just continue to finish up this edge. All right, and I'll see you on that side. Okay, now we're on the last pass going this way. We'll start right about there. Okay. And for this one, I might just put a little tack at this corner just to hold it. I'm just going to put it in the seam allowance. Okay. All right. So now we'll come back to our starting point here, and we're going to do the opposite. We're going to go this way. Okay. So again, with our protractor, we take the center, we line it up with the center of that notch on the edge, and then we're looking for 30 degrees to be on that crease line with the middle. So that's 30, that's the center, which means that this needs to be about like this. Let's see, that's 30, more like that. Okay. All right, so this is going to be our angle, and we're going to start again from here and then do one straight line and then use that to key off of. All right, this is the end of our first line. Okay, now same thing. We have our first indicator line, and then we're going to use that as a basis to go from here all the way out, and then we're going to flip it and go from here the other way. All right, so I'll see you when we get to this side. All right, so the last little bit on this first side. I'm going to back tack that. Okay, and now we flip it. We start working from our center line backwards. Okay, and I'll see you when we get to the other side. Okay, last pass on this side. Do a little back tack. When we get to here. Okay. All right, so now we have our complete quilted piece for the back. All right, the next step is going to be we're going to place the artwork on the back, sort of tape it down, and then we're going to do a stitch around the edge of it in a black thread. All right, next step. One additional note is, like, if you end up with a little bit of the batting that has sort of like pushed itself as you make your stitch, if you end up with a more than like a tiny edge, you might want to come back and just trim that with a pair of scissors, because when we sew this to the front, we're going to want to be at 5/8, and you will have trouble seeing your line here because the batting will be covering that. So if you have an excess amount because something is shifted, just go ahead and trim that with a pair of scissors. Okay, so we've got our back panel quilted. This is the patch that's going to go on here. Now, before we sew on the patch, because we're going to have to, we're going to switch out the thread to be black so that it blends in with this. Before we do that, we're going to quilt the front panels left and right. We'll quilt these so that we can apply the embroidery all at once. Okay, And so we're going to do the same thing that we did with this, where we're going to basically cut out, we'll lay this down, trace out the batting, cut that out, pin it, and then sew it up using a mark from the middle as our guide. Okay, so you've already seen that part. We're just going to repeat that process for the left and right front panel. Okay, so do that, and when we come back, we'll apply the embroidery. Okay, now we're going to start in the embroidery process, and first thing we want to do is we want to place our patch in the right location here. All right, the height from the top of the pattern that I have used, that I like, is about 5 inches down from the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now that includes, there's going to be a 5/8 seam allowance here, but 5 inches basically keeps it, if you go up too high, it starts to get into the back and it makes the slope of the back a little stiff. Okay. We also notice that we have our fold line that we can reference, and so we want to center the patch on that fold line, which it looks like that's centered. And we got our 5 inches, and we're going to want to tape this down just lightly, just to hold it in place during the sewing process. Now we put enough tape on here that you can cover all edges, and we're going to gradually, as we sew it, we're going to remove the tape. Okay, so I've put enough tape on here to hold it in place, and then now we're going to take it over to the sewing machine. Okay, we're at the sewing machine. We've switched our thread to be black, all right, because we want the black to blend in with the patch. Now, this patch is fairly large, and so we want to actually do some stitching in the middle, but we're going to do the stitching in the middle first, because we don't want to do the outline and then have this buckle when we try to do the middle. So we're going to do the middle first, and this little eyebrow piece is a nice little place where we could put some black thread without it being noticed, and then maybe even down here below the nose, and that should tack it enough, maybe the ears too, that should tack it enough that the middle part won't bubble out. All right, I'm just going to do just this little nose piece where the black thread is pretty thick. Do a little back tack, and then you can lift the foot and turn it. And we'll stop, lift the foot and turn it. And then do a back tack, and then cut. Okay. Actually didn't cut. Let's see. All right. Cut. And then we can just trim this, and then you can't even see where that is. Okay, let's do one more, like right here, and then maybe one each at the ear, okay? We can trim these threads later, and then at the ear here, just like this. And then one more here. Okay. All right. That helps make sure that the middle is stabilized as we start to do the edge. Okay, pick a place to start. I like to start at the ear, just because it's a way to key off of like a very pronounced spot. Do a little bit of a back tack, and then don't go too fast, and then every once in a while you can pause and turn. Lift the foot and then turn. All right. You notice there's like maybe an 1/8 to 1/4 inch margin here to work with. And when you get to a section where the tape is, just remove that tape and then keep moving. All right, I'm going to keep going, and when we get to a difficult spot, like maybe the whiskers, we'll stop and talk about that. Okay, we're going to do this little tricky whisker area. Again, we pause, lift the foot, rotate. I'm trying to go slowly, almost one stitch at a time. And then we turn it, one more stitch, turn it, a couple more stitches, and go slowly. Turn it. Okay. Now we're back, and then we just turn it and we just keep moving on. Okay, it's gonna be the similar thing on this side. Okay, we're finishing up here, back to where we started on this ear, and then we'll do a back tack and then cut. Okay, all right, so that's our patch for the back. All right, let's move on to the other side panels. Okay, so now we're going to do the left and the right on the front. And the measurements that I like for this are about 6 inches from this tip. And then bear in mind that that accounts for the fact that there's going to be some seam allowance there. So 6 inches from that tip to where this is, and then I like about 1.5 inches, and there's going to be a zipper here, so this is going to be folded under, so bear that in mind. So 6 inches roughly, and then this one the same, 6 inches, let's see, right about there, and then 1.5 inches, like so. And then let's take a look and eyeball it, because we want these to be, this one you might have to move up a little bit because you want these to be even. And so try to position it so it aesthetically looks correct. Okay. So like this tail is coming in a little bit. This tail is going up a little bit, but it looks roughly even. Okay. Okay, same thing. We're going to use some tape to get it in position, or to lock the position of it. I'll make sure it's flat. One thing I'm not doing is I'm not taping all the way across. Like for instance, I'm not putting a piece of tape like this across, because what we want to do is we want to take the tape up as we're going. So we only want a piece from the outside to the edge, and then this tail, let's just make sure that we're getting the tail flat. All right, part of the reason I had you do the bigger one first is to give you a little bit of practice, because this one is going to be a little bit harder because our margin is a little bit less and the outline is a little more intricate. So hopefully doing the larger face one gave you a little bit of practice, make you more comfortable with sewing this patch on. All right, so I'm going to finish this up and we'll see you at the sewing machine. Okay, so it's the same process, just a little more intricate, and we want to take it slow. So pick a spot where you want to start, and this seems like a nice spot. We're going to leave the claw for the very end, but we're going to start here and then just work our way through. And it's going to be a little bit tighter, the margin's a little bit tighter, so take it really slow, okay? And at times it's going to feel like you're just doing one stitch at a time. One or two before you have to turn it. My preference is to stay a little bit inside, so if you don't go off the edge. You don't want to risk going off the edge. If you do go off the edge, just come back on the next stitch. Also, it's not gonna kill you if the black thread is a little to the inside of the pattern, because there's a lot of black in that pattern, and so it's not gonna be terribly visible if you get some black in there. All right, I'm going to keep doing this, and we'll see you when we get back to the top. Okay, we've done all the way around. We're coming back to the end on this claw. I'm just going to finish this up. The key again to this is to be patient. Take it very slowly, even if you have to do it one stitch at a time. And yeah, just be very, very patient when you do this. And we don't need, I don't think we need any on the interior. This patch is much smaller than the bigger face one, and so I don't think we're at risk of any kind of buckling in the middle there. So I'm just going to finish this up, back tack, cut. All right, and then we're going to trim some of these threads, and then we'll move on to the next one. Okay, same thing with the tiger on the left. I'm actually going to start, I'm not going to do the tail. I'm going to save the tail for last, so that when we do this part, the tail will sort of just lay where it needs to lay, as opposed to doing the tail and having the tail drive the placement. All right, so we're going to start somewhere in here. Same thing, just go very slowly, take it stitch by stitch. We do our little back tack, and then just go very slowly, and then if necessary, lift the foot, especially when you get to areas like this that are really tight. Just be really patient and go very slowly, okay? All right, I'm going to see you when we get back up to here. Okay, we've gone all the way around here. We're near the end. Just going to I'm just going to sort of reposition this tail just slightly, just so that we're allowing it to sort of be where it wants to be before we start sewing on it. Okay, all right, so now we're just going to work our way around the tail and back. Okay, so we've got all the way around. Now we're working our way back. Again, like one stitch at a time, 2 stitches at a time. It's pretty much locked in right at this point, so tape isn't, we don't need the tape anymore. All right, but we still need to finish this out all the way back to here. All right. Okay, this is the end point here. A couple more stitches, back tack, and then cut. All right. All right, so that's our right side, our right tiger. All right, now we have all of our embroidered panels done. Right, left, and then the back. At this point, we could start sewing it up to the sleeves, but I'm going to first we'll do the other one, the white panels with the heat press, so that we'll have all of our pieces in play when we start to sew on the sleeves. All right, that's next. Okay, we're at the heat press, and we're going to use our heat press artwork to place on. We're going to start with the back of the white panel. All right, now the first thing we want to do, this black frame is not part of the artwork. The black frame is just a reference for the printer to know the correct size to print to. So first thing is we're going to take this off. So if you did this artwork, then cut that off. Okay. Now this is a t-shirt press. We're going to go to 320 degrees. It's still heating up, and for 30 seconds. Now on a t-shirt press, if you're familiar with these, the t-shirt would actually be going in this way, and the artwork would be like this. But in our situation, you know, it's not a full t-shirt, so we can orient it however we want. We're still going to do the 5 inches for the back. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So roughly here for the top of the artwork. And again, that includes like a 5/8 seam allowance. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we still have our crease line for the center, and so we can actually line up our artwork. That's usually one of the more tricky things, is getting the artwork centered, but In this case, we have the advantage of having a crease line. Alright. So I'm actually going to move this down a little bit to make sure we're centered. Alright, there's a silicone pad here. Our fabric lays on the silicone pad. And the artwork, you can see the white is the downside. And we're going to use some paper to make sure the platen doesn't melt the top of that. Okay, so our paper's down. We're at 320. We're going to lower this down. We're going to let it go. After 30 seconds, the timer will go off, and then we'll lift it up. The timer just went off. I'm going to put a block here. This is a cooling block. Not completely necessary, but this helps speed up the process and also make sure that our print lays flat as it cools. Okay, we gave that about a minute or so to cool off. We can lift our paper away, and then now we can pull our print, or sorry, the release paper for the print. All right. That looks pretty good. Okay, now we're going to do the front two panels. Okay, similar thing. This black frame is simply a guide to make sure the printer prints it to the correct size. So we don't need that. And we're going to split this. These are just joined together for convenience in the print. Alright, and this one is going to be similar. The previous embroider was 6 inches down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so about there. And then about 1.5 inches this way, because we want to be off the zipper. And then remember, we have a 5/8 seam allowance here as well. Alright, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That puts it right about the top of the head. And we want to try and keep that straight. Okay. Just going to tilt that a little bit to make the lettering look a little more straight. Okay. That's what we're going to go with. And then again, we'll use, this is parchment paper. It just prevents anything from accidentally getting stuck to the platen. And then we'll warm up our press and then pull it down. Okay. We're ready to press. We're not quite at temperature, but we're supposed to be at 320, but we're at 309. I think it'll be okay. All right. Same thing. It'll do it for 30 seconds, and then we'll lift up. The timer went off. And then we're going to do the block, our cooling block. All right. I'm going to leave that on for about a minute, and then we'll come back and take that off. Okay, that's been a minute. All right, we're going to just carefully peel this off. All right, that looks nice. This is the left side, so now we're going to do the right side. All right, similar process. Cut out our artwork. We were doing 6 inches from the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So about there. And then 1.5 inches from the edge here. So something like that. Okay. And then we can center it a little bit. And then put our parchment paper down, and then lower the platen. All right, that'll be about 30 seconds. Okay. Just very carefully. This is still hot. Oh, actually, I want to use my cooling block here. Okay, I'm gonna leave the cooling block on for a minute. Okay. Yeah, now it's cool. And we'll just carefully lift that up. All right, perfect. Okay, that's it for the heat press. I'm gonna take these pieces back to the cutting table. Okay, here we are at the cutting table. Let's take a look at our pieces here. So this was the embroidered side. This is what the equivalent is going to look like for the back side. Okay, so it looks like you can kind of see the embroidery. So this is, we know this is sort of both centered correctly. Let's see what it'll look like with the sleeves. We'll invert the sleeves. So it's going to look sort of like that. What's this? Okay, black sleeves and the white background. And then the side, the fronts are going to look like this. Alright, that looks pretty good. And these lined up pretty well based on our measurements. Okay. Alright, so that's it for doing the embroidery and the artwork. I'll put links on how to order artwork. You can do your own. It's relatively inexpensive, especially for short runs. So it's a nice solution for like one-off designs. And then the next video will be attaching the sleeves to the body panels. All right, stay tuned for that, and thank you for watching.